Hi, welcome to the next chapter. I'm Miss Mary and I am so excited that you are here with me today. I'm very excited because we finally get to start our chapter book, The Mouse and the Motorcycle, and the Jesus Storybook Bible. Let's go ahead and get reading. Before we start reading Beverly Cleary's The Mouse and the Motorcycle, I want to read from the back cover. The back cover gives us a little bit more information about what we can expect the story to be about. Let's see, it says, Ralph the mouse was terrified. All he had wanted to do was ride the little motorcycle someone had left on the table. Instead, both Ralph and the motorcycle had taken a terrible fall right into the bottom of the waste paper basket. He was trapped, left to wait for whatever fate was in store for him. But it turned out to be Ralph's lucky day. Along came Keith, the owner of the toy motorcycle, who was staying with his family in the hotel room where Ralph lived. Not only did Keith save Ralph's life, but he taught him how to ride the bike. And when everyone was asleep, he turned Ralph loose in the hotel halls to enjoy the biking adventure of his life. But adventures can be both fun and trouble, as Ralph and Keith soon found out. I'm so excited to get reading. Let's get started. Chapter 1. The New Guests. Keith, the boy in the rumpled shorts and shirt, did not know he was being watched as he entered room 215 of the Mountain View Inn. Neither did his mother and father, who both looked hot and tired. They had come from Ohio and for 5 days had driven across plains and deserts and over mountains to the old hotel in the California foothills, 25 miles from Highway 40. The fourth person entering 215 may have known he was being watched, but he did not care. He was Matt, 60 if he was a day, who at the moment was the bellboy. Matt also replaced worn-out light bulbs, renewed washers and leaky faucets, carried trays for people who telephoned room service to order food sent to their rooms, and sometimes prevented children from hitting one another with croquet mallets on the lawn behind the hotel. Now, Matt's right shoulder sagged with the weight of one of the bags he was carrying. "Here you are, Mr. Gridley, room 215 and 216, he said, setting the smaller of the bags on a luggage rack at the foot of the double bed before he opened a door into the next room. "I expect you and Mrs. Gridley will want room 216. It is a corner room with twin beds and a private bath." He carried the heavy bag into the next room, where he could be heard opening windows. Outside, a chipmunk chattered in a pine tree and a chickadee whistled, "Beep-beep-beep." The boy's mother looked critically around room 215 and whispered, "I think we should drive back to the main highway. There must be a motel with a vacancy sign someplace. We didn't look long enough." "Not another mile," answered the father. "I'm not driving another mile on a California highway on a holiday weekend. Did you see the way that truck almost forced us off the road?" "Dad, did you see those two fellows on motorcycles?" began the boy and stopped, realizing he should not interrupt an argument. "But this place is so old," protested the boy's mother, "and we have only 3 weeks for our whole trip. We had planned to spend the 4th of July weekend in San Francisco, and we wanted to show Keith as much of the United States as we could." "San Francisco will have to wait, and this is part of the United States. Besides, this used to be a very fashionable hotel," said Mr. Gridley. "People came from miles around." 50 years ago," said Mrs. Gridley, "and they came by horse and buggy." The bellboy returned to room 215. The dining room opens at 6:30, sir. There is ping pong in the game room, TV in the lobby, and croquet on the back lawn. I'm sure you will be very comfortable. Matt, who had seen the guests come and go for many years, knew there were two kinds. Those who thought the hotel was a dreadful old barn of a place, and those who thought it was charming and quaint, so quiet and restful. Of course we will be comfortable, said Mr. Gridley, dropping some coins into Matt's hands for carrying the bags. But this big old hotel is positively spooky, Mrs. Gridley made one last protest. It's probably full of mice. Matt opened the window wide. Mice? Oh, no, ma'am. The management wouldn't stand for mice. I wouldn't mind a few mice, the boy said as he looked around the room at the high ceiling, the knotty pine walls, the carpet so threadbare that many of its roses had almost entirely faded, the one chair with the antimacassar on its back, the wash basin and towel racks in the corner of the room. I like it here, he announced. A whole room to myself. Usually I just get a cot in the corner of a motel room. His mother smiled, relenting. Then she turned to Matt. I'm sorry, it's just that it was so hot crossing Nevada, and we are not used to mountain driving. Back on the highway, the traffic was bumper to bumper. I'm sure we shall be very comfortable. After Matt had gone, closing the door behind him, Mr. Gridley said, I need rest before dinner. 400 miles of driving in that mountain traffic. It was too much. And if we're going to stay for a weekend, I had better unpack, said Mrs. Gridley. At least I'll have a chance to do some drip drying. Alone in room 215 and unaware that he was being watched, the boy began to explore. He got down on his hands and knees and looked under the bed. He leaned out the open window as far as he could and greedily inhaled deep breaths of pine-scented air. He turned the hot and cold water on and off in the wash basin and slipped one of the small bars of paper-wrapped soap into his pocket. Under the window, he discovered a knothole in the pine wall down by the floor and, squatting, poked his finger into the hole. When he felt nothing inside, he lost interest. Next, Keith opened his suitcase and took out an apple and several small cars, a sedan, a sports car, and an ambulance about 6 inches long, and a red motorcycle half the length of the cars, which he dropped on the striped bedspread before he bit into the apple. He ate the apple noisily in big chomping bites, and then laid the core on the bedside table between the lamp and the telephone. Keith liked to play, running his cars up and down the bedspread, pretending that the stripes on the spread were highways and making noises with his mouth. Vroom, vroom for the sports car. Wee, wee for the ambulance, and boo, 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 boo for the motorcycle. Up and down the stripes. Once Keith stopped suddenly and looked quickly around the room as if he expected to see something or someone, but when he saw nothing unusual, he returned to his cars. Vroom, vroom, bang, crash! The sports car hit the sedan and rolled over on the highway stripe. Boo, 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 boo. The motorcycle came roaring to the scene of the crash. Keith, his mother called from the next room. Time to get washed for dinner. Okay, Keith parked his cars in a straight line on the bedside table beside the telephone, where they looked like a row of real cars, only much, much smaller. The first thing Mrs. Gridley noticed when she and Mr. Gridley came into the room was the apple core on the table. She dropped it with a thunk into the metal wastebasket beside the table as she gave several quick little sniffs of the air and said, looking perplexed, I don't care what that bellboy said. I'm sure this hotel has mice. I hope so, muttered Keith. What did you think of chapter 1 of The Mouse and the Motorcycle? I thought it was so fun, but when I got to the illustration of the motorcycle on chapter 2, I wanted to keep on reading, but I had to remember that is for next week. There were some things in this chapter that I thought were really cool and I wanted to talk about. First off, I forgot when I first read this that the setting, the time that this was taking place, the time that Keith and his family were at the hotel was during the 4th of July weekend. What? It's the 4th of July right now. That's awesome. Also, I noticed a couple of things about Keith's behavior that I thought were really cool to try to copy ourselves. The first thing I noticed is that his mom told him, okay, Keith, it's time to put away your things and get washed up for dinner. And Keith just said, okay. He stopped what he was doing and he said, okay. He didn't complain. He didn't say, oh, I wanted more time, or oh, I don't want to wash my hands, or oh, whatever. He just said, okay, and he did what his mom asked him. And I think that's something that we can try to do this week. And also, when his mother and his dad were talking, he had interrupted their conversation. But then he noticed and remembered that he shouldn't interrupt people when they're talking. And so he stopped saying what he was saying, even though he really wanted to say it. He stopped saying what he wanted to say so that he wouldn't interrupt the adults or the people that were talking. And I thought, that's another really cool thing that we can try to do this week. So number 1, let's work on obeying right away without complaining or whining or grumbling. And number 2, let's work on not interrupting people. Those are great things we can copy. Anyways, I can't wait to read chapter 2 next week. I hope you're enjoying this. I'm so excited because with the permission of HarperCollins Children's Books, we are going to read the Jesus Storybook Bible by Sally Lloyd-Jones and illustrated by Jago. Let's get started on the first story, The Beginning, A Perfect Home. The Beginning, A Perfect Home. The Song of Creation from Genesis chapter 1 and 2. In the beginning, there was nothing. Nothing to hear, nothing to feel, nothing to see. Only emptiness and darkness and nothing but nothing. But God was there, and God had a wonderful plan. I'll take this emptiness, God said, and I'll fill it up. Out of the darkness, I'm going to make light, and out of the nothing, I'm going to make everything. Like a mommy bird flutters her wings over her eggs to help her babies hatch, God hovered over the deep, silent darkness. He was making life happen. God spoke, that's all, and whatever he said, it happened. God said, "Hello, light," and light shone into the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night. "You're good," God said, and they were. Then God said, "Hello, sea, hello, sky," and a great space opened up, wide and deep and high. "You're good," God said, and they were. Then God said, "Hello, land," and there, splashing up through the oceans, came cliffs, mountains, sandy beaches. "You're good," God said, and they were. "Hello, trees," God said. "Hello, grass and flowers," and everything everywhere burst into life. He made buds bud, shoots shoot, flowers flower. "You're good," God said, and they were. "Hello, stars," God said. "Hello, sun, hello, moon." And whizzing into the darkness came fiery globes, spinning around and around, whirling orange and purple and golden planets. "You're good," God said, and they were. "Hello, birds," God said, and with a fluttering and flapping and chirping and singing, birds filled the skies. "Hello, fish," God said, and with a darting and dashing and wriggling and splashing, fish filled the seas. "You're good," God said, and they were. Then God said, "Hello, animals!" And everyone came out to play. The earth was filled with noisy noises, growling and gobbling and snapping and snorting and happy skerfuffling. "You're good," God said, and they were. God saw all that he had made, and he loved them. And they were lovely because he loved them. But God saved the best for last. From the beginning, God had a shining dream in his heart. He would make people to share his forever happiness. They would be his children, and the world would be their perfect home. So God breathed life into Adam and Eve. When they opened their eyes, the first thing they ever saw was God's face. And when God saw them, he was like a new dad. "You look like me," he said. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever made." God loved them with all of his heart, and they were lovely because he loved them. And Adam and Eve joined in the song of the stars and the streams and the wind in the trees, the wonderful song of love to the one who made them. Their hearts were filled with happiness, and nothing ever made them sad or lonely or sick or afraid. God looked at everything he had made. "Perfect," he said, and it was. But all the stars and the mountains and oceans and galaxies and everything were nothing compared to how much God loved his children. He would move heaven and earth to be near them, always. Whatever happened, whatever it cost him, he would always love them. And so it was that the wonderful love story began. Thank you for reading the first part of the Jesus Storybook Bible with me by Sally Lloyd-Jones. The first part was called The Beginning, A Perfect Home, and it was all about when God created the whole world out of nothing. Isn't that just amazing? I love reading these words, and when I read it out of the scripture and just imagining that time when God took blank space, nothing, and made everything just with his words. And it reminds me of how powerful God is and how creative and good God is to all of us. I wanted to see if you guys would this week draw a picture of something of God's creation. Anything. You can draw something at the beach, you can draw mountains, you can draw any animal or many animals. Whatever it is that you want to draw, I would love if you would draw that. Have your parents take a picture and send it to me because I would love to see your picture and your artwork. All right, we'll continue this next week. Thank you for watching the next chapter today. It was so nice to get together and read. Can't wait to see you next time. Bye.
How do you say goodbye to an ocean? Just wave. Wave it out. Wave it out.